There's Christopher. Barely in the nick of time. So you're here. You're Stephen?
Yes, ma'am.
See, it's the end of the semester. I'm learning everybody. Okay. Okay. Just for the recording's sake, and those that just walk in, you need to do your class evaluations either via email or Canvas. It's on the either way. You can do that. Today, we're going to do our last two chapters. Then, today's Wednesday. Monday, we have a test. Yes?
On Canvas, it said we have an exam and a test. Is
Yeah.
it the same thing?
It says exams chapters 22 to 24 on April 28th, and it says test chapter.
One of them is a place marker. I think I'll remove the one that's incorrect. But yeah, so I do that in the beginning of the semester, but then I just built the exam the other day, so it puts another one in there. So that's Monday. Wednesday, we're presenting final projects. It's our last class day. And then I always forget to bring that in here. Hold on 1 second, because I want to tell you the truth about your final. Okay, this is on, right? Yes, okay. The final for this class, Architecture 2312, is going to be online, just like our normal test, and it's going to, it'll just be less questions over each chapter. I haven't built it yet, but I'm thinking 50 questions, 2 points each. It'll take you 2.5 hours. That's the final exam time. Now, if we were to do it in class, it would be done, the time would be, according to the Del Mar schedule, it would be Wednesday, May 7th from 8 to 10:30 a.m. So since we're having it online, what I'm going to do is just say you can do it any time between our last day of class, but no later than Wednesday, May 7th, 10:30 p.m. a.m. That's when it'll be due. Okay? So you just click on whenever you're ready. You'll have 2.5 hours to take it, like if you were to come here. Click on it, take it, just be done by 10:30 a.m. Wednesday, May 7th. Okay? It'll be open book, just like our test. And your review is basically everything we've done, all the reviews up until now. And you can look at your old test and see where you messed up. But you may not have those same questions because it pulls them out of a question bank. So look at your reviews as well. Okay? And don't forget to watch Cool Spaces for extra credit. You can still give me details up until the last class day. 5 points each. Anything else? I think that's it. Any questions on any of that stuff? Okay. Now, chapter 23 and 24, interior walls and partitions. This isn't necessarily talking about decorating per se, but just the structure of interiors. Talks about firewalls. What a firewall is, a wall that forms a separation for the spread of fire. It extends from the foundation through the roof. A lot of times these will be required in buildings that are separations of buildings for like stores in a strip center, or townhomes have firewalls that separate the two. They go from the foundation all the way to the roof. Nothing can penetrate that. It divides a single building into smaller fire compartments, is what it says. And so it doesn't allow the fire to spread. A shaft wall, a different kind of wall, is used to enclose a multi-story opening through a building such as an elevator shaft, ductwork, conduits, or pipes. So a shaft is like an elevator. It'll be a tube going all the way up through the building. That also has to be fire rated usually and sealed for smoke so that the smoke doesn't travel from one floor, or the fire from one floor to the other. And the rating, of course, depends on the numbers of connected floors. Fire barriers and partitions are not quite as tight as firewalls, but they still restrict the spread of fire and smoke within the building. These walls around, well, that hallway wall is probably a 1-hour wall. It doesn't go up to the roof, but what it does is it keeps, it'll be a metal stud with a layer of 5/8 inch sheetrock on each side. It will stand up supposedly for 1 hour and allow the hallway, which is an exit passageway, people to get through that hallway to an exit before it collapses. So that's just like a fire barrier or partition. John Laura, right? You'll need to listen to the beginning of this recording for all my announcements about finals. So, okay, next slide. Smoke barriers and partitions, again, are just try to inhibit the rate of smoke spread for amount of time to allow people a safe escape from the building. Smoke kills more people than fire, so it's very important to include that. You don't necessarily think of it in your, it's not part of the structure, but it's closing up the envelope so that the smoke can't spread, and it's an important part of design. Other non-bearing partitions are partitions in the building that do not need to be fire separation walls or bear a structural load. This wall right here is probably a non-bearing, non-fire partition. It has sound qualities in it to keep the sound from jumping from class to class, but if you were to tear it down, nothing bad would happen. You could move it around, and the whole building would be fine. Framed partition systems. We've talked about wood framing before, and then there's metal. This picture is of metal light gauge framing, which is mostly used in commercial work. This building is metal light gauge framing inside. And then masonry can also be used with wood or metal furring strips. And what that means is, like if you have a concrete block wall, you can add a channel that looks like this. Like here's your CMU. I'm looking down on a section. You can add a little channel every now and then put your sheetrock on top of that so that you have something to nail it into. Then you have a softer looking wall than just a concrete block wall. Okay. There's just a view of how light gauge steel framing would come together. Number one is the stud member, which would be the same in a wood construction, would be the 2x4. Number three would be the wood channel, the channels that the stud, the light gauge steel stud fits into. And it talks about the different thicknesses of and that is to be specified. The steel studs are fastened to the runners. No fasteners are needed when you have the open truss wire stud to runners, which is what this right side is. It's a different type. And you just crimp them down, I think. Oh, there's a good picture of the concrete block, like I was just trying to badly draw. You have your concrete block, you have your metal furring channels, and then you have your finished product on the outside. And there's several ways to do that. So this also, the concrete block might be a less expensive way to build. You can run your wires. You can't necessarily run plumbing in this little space, but you can run wires through that. It's also, if you go to an existing building that's already masonry, you could put this on top of it if you didn't want that masonry look. Fire blocking of combustible concealed spaces. You need to, that's something that's required by the building code, and the fire blocking, again, blocks the fire spread between the studs up into another floor, another area. Plaster is a term that we use a lot. Refers to any cement-like substance applied to the surface in a paste that hardens. Used to be like some of the old buildings on the East Campus. When I worked at an architecture firm, we were remodeling some of those, and they had plaster walls. And you can, if you knock on it, you can tell the difference between gypsum wallboard and the plaster. The plaster's like hard, but that's more painstaking to put on, so we don't use it as much anymore because now we have gypsum wallboard. This just gives you a little insight into plaster. There's a guy spraying some on. Plaster Portland cement is also known as stucco. That's something you might use on the outside. I think we've talked about that before. 3 layers of stucco. You can do it on the inside or the outside. Most commonly, it's on the outside. There's a outside view, and you can see there's some cracking. You still need to have joints to control the cracking. We've talked about expansion and contraction joints before. Looks like they might not quite have enough, or maybe that was a poor job on, they didn't have the right mixture of stuff because it's cracking all in the middle too. So plaster may be applied by machine or by hand. The guy on the right's doing it by hand. These are the laths. The lath is what you put on the wall to kind of hold the plaster into place. It's like a metal screen. These are just different pictures of types of lath. And sometimes when you're right on the water, like if you're building out on the island, you'll want a stainless steel lath just to make sure it doesn't rust. Here they're attaching the lath attached to the steel studs. A gypsum lath is more like a board, and it will absorb and hold the plaster on there, or the stucco. There's different pieces that you might need, accessories for corners, expansion joints. There's one right there. And so you don't want your plaster to just, or your sheetrock to just turn the corner with no protection. So a lot of times you'll put corner beads, which, trying to see if one of these is that. This is a corner bead right here. That strengthens the corner so that when you knock into it, it doesn't chip away. There's a section through plaster. You've got your metal lath back in the back. You've got your scratch coat, which is the initial thick coat of plaster. If you look at houses under construction and they put that gray, muddy looking stuff on, that's the scratch coat. Then you come along with a brown coat that's a little bit finer. It's still not the final color. And then you have your finish coat, which will be the color you want. And then you can also do any kind of swirly decorations or make it smooth, whatever you want. Here's an interior. You can see how they've done a sort of a pattern on their finish coat, give it a little texture. Here's an example of the gypsum lath, which would just be the gypsum board with a rough finish, then your brown coat, and then your finish coat. You probably don't need the scratch coat on the inside anyway when you're doing this type of plaster. Here they're just plastering over masonry, which has a good enough bonding to hold the plaster without a lath. It should soak it in if it's done right. And there's just another veneer plaster base. Veneer just means it's like a thin skin, like wood veneer. Sometimes I don't know if we have any, like these cabinets are probably wood veneer. It just has a thin layer of fake wood on the top. So this is like a plaster, with just a thin layer of plaster on an inside partition, and then you have a plaster base. That's just a picture of a plaster wall. And here's different plaster partition systems. You could draw these for details if you want, showing the rating. Some of them are rated, some of them are not. There's another kind of partition. Talks about the STC, which is the sound transmission coefficient. Sometimes, like here, we have a sound barrier wall here, so that has to have a certain STC so that we're not interrupting each other with our lectures. Why are you taking pictures of it?
I'm taking a picture of the detail.
Oh, it'll be online. It's online.
Yeah, when I leave,
Okay.
it's already on my phone.
Okay. Anyway, the walls over on the East Campus, I think were more like this type of wall right here. They were very thin walls, and you can see these are very thin. That had a small kind of channel or stud, and then just plaster. So with age, they become very brittle. Okay, then gypsum board came along. Makes life a lot easier. It's less time consuming to install, easier to ship. So it's less expensive than doing plaster the old-fashioned way. There's different kinds of gypsum board. You got Type X, which whenever you see Type X, it means it's a fire rating. Type C for fire-rated assemblies, but thinner than Type X. I've never used Type C. I've always been able to use Type X, but I guess if you have a thin partition, you only have so much space, you might use that. There's also water-resistant gypsum board. You'll use that in your toilet rooms or any kitchens where there's going to be water, so that it doesn't absorb it and get all mushy. Abuse-resistant gypsum board, probably out there in the hall on the bottom, probably up to about 4 feet. It's abuse-resistant because people are always kicking it, not on purpose, but it just gets abused. Mold-resistant, again, you'll use that in wet areas where you don't want mold to grow. There's ceiling board, foil-back gypsum board. There's many kinds depending on the use you need. Here are guys hanging the gypsum board. One of the reasons, if you recall, that you place your studs at a certain interval is so that the edges of your finished board will line up with the nailing surface. So that's why gypsum boards are 4 by 8 usually, and your studs are at 16 or 32. I think that adds up somehow. But you want to be able to, of course, nail your stuff on easily and not have to look for a nailing surface. They're using screws on the metal. Here's some more of the corner beads that you would use on gypsum board or for the expansion control joints right here. You'd put that on a corner or that. You put these trims on edge pieces. You might even wrap it around like that if it's going to be real bad. Just different things you'll use for different reasons. Here, after they've hung it up, they're going to use a joint compound. They're going to tape the joints like this guy's doing right here, and then they're going to put a mud over it to kind of even out the whole surface. The tape will reinforce the joint, and the mud will even it out. And then they'll sand it, and they'll put a finish usually on it to conceal the irregularities. If you look at this wall, it's a very smooth finish. It's got a little texture on it, but maybe not as much as what your house has on it. This would be a light orange peel finish, I think, because if you look at it, it looks kind of like an orange peel. Has a little tiny bumps in it. And then you can have a heavier orange peel finish, which is most common. You can make it very smooth, but then, of course, the smoother you make it, the more imperfections will show, and it'll be harder to make so perfect. This talks about the finish standards, the levels you might need from 0, where it's just a temporary thing, you don't need it to last very long, up to 5, which would be the highest quality, very fine finish. There you can see all the joints taped, and they put mud over the nailing holes too, so that will be smoothed out. And this is going to be a level 4 finish, which is designed for surfaces to be finished with flat paints. You got different levels of paints too, flat, glossy. Glossy, of course, will show a lot of imperfections because it's glossy. Flat won't show as much. Here you have a wall finished with a high gloss paint, level 5 skim coat. So you can see that. You can even see the lines still where it connected. I mean, that's a good job, but it's very hard to conceal everything. Here's some other gypsum wallboard partitions, which you could draw. Again, you want to take a picture? The amount of the amount of gypboard on your wall determines the fire rating. Usually 1 hour is 1 layer of gypsum board on each side. 2 hours is 2 layers. 3 hours is 3 layers. I've done up to a 4-hour wall before, where you had 4 on each side. And that was between, there was an occupancy of a business and the storage that had they stored paper and stuff that could catch on fire easy. So you didn't want that to jump through to the business side of the wall. Here's a light gauge framing going into place. You can see that basically the structure is this concrete, and there's probably columns that we can't really see. But these walls, you know, they're not holding anything up. They're just separating the space. And so you can go in and move them around if you need to remodel an office space or something like that. There you can see how they're just kind of tacked into the ceiling. Here's a gypsum wallboard or gypsum board shaft wall systems, which have to be, of course, fire rated and sealed. There has to be sealant up here and down here, and all the holes have to be sealed. Again, the amount of the gypsum layers depends on the fire rating. So masonry partition systems. Sometimes you'll have those. You know, we think of masonry as either your standard brick, which is a 4x8 modular size, or concrete block, which is 8x16. But they also make thin ones that you can use for interior partitions that are only like 4 inches wide. And here, that's what they're showing. This is good for like in your gym locker rooms, stuff like that, where it's going to be wet all the time. You have this thin concrete masonry, and then you can cover it. It'll either come with a tile finish, a glossy finish, or you can cover it with ceramic tile to give it that easy to clean coating. You can also cover it with gypsum wallboard or plaster. Here they've used recycled stone tiles to finish a wall, just for an unusual type finish. Wall and partition facings. So here's a good detail to take a picture of. This would be a masonry wall, like in a bathroom, where you would have, there's your concrete floor, then you have a thin layer of mortar bed, then you have your ceramic tile going up to make your base. Then over here you have your 4-inch wide concrete block partition. And then that would either have a glazed finish, or you would continue up with tile if you wanted. You can also, this one is stone or granite used on a wall. You can also, of course, use wood if you needed to. So masonry, interior walls and partitions, if you wanted to specify that stuff, you would find it in these sections. Section 4 under unit masonry, Section 9 under plastering and gypsum board. The finishing and painting is Section 9, and the interior specialties, Section 10. That would be like the partitions and demountable partitions, meaning sometimes you have partitions that are made to move around. And so without ruining them, you can take them down and put them somewhere else. They don't. So then now to Chapter 24, ceilings and floors, the last part of your construction. So a ceiling does a lot of things besides just enclose the space. It controls the light. It prevents the passage of sound. This is an acoustical ceiling. And you can see that the light is reflecting off the ceiling and making a very evenly diffused light. It's also capturing my words or any sound that we make and blocking it from going up and over. It also is a distribution center for air ducts. You can see the HVAC terminals. That's where the air is blowing out. And then above that, there'll be ducts. There's a return air right there. It has speakers in it. I think that's a speaker right there. for when we show a movie. It has the sprinkler heads, which are the little round things. They'll pop, if there was a fire, those would pop down and water would spray everywhere. Or since this is a computer lab that might have a dry system or a gaseous system that would suck the oxygen out of the room and extinguish the fire. Let's see. It also gives a little bit of order because it's a grid. So they do a lot of things, ceiling systems. Types of ceilings. You can have exposed ceilings, like in this picture, where you can see all the different components. If you do that, your workmanship has to be top-notch. It's more expensive because you have to use finer materials. Whereas, I don't know if you can see, like if you look at an angle up through one of these vents, you can see that it's a foil duct. You couldn't do that in an exposed situation. You'd have to have a nice stainless steel type ductwork. It looks pretty and neat. Some people like that. They like the look of it. You know, restaurants do that a lot. You look up and it's all painted black, but you can see everything. But it is, you know, you'd think it'd be less expensive, but a lot of times it's more expensive. Because when you do it this way, you can hide all, you know, if you were to lift one of those tiles, it'd probably be a real mess up there with all the wires and the ducts everywhere. Tightly attached ceilings are where you would have not much room between your floors. So basically you would a home usually has tightly attached ceilings between the floors. Like if you have a 2-story home, basically you'll have maybe 8 feet from the floor to the ceiling. Then you'll have 2x6 or 2x8 floor joists for your next floor. And then your ceiling's just attached right there. So that's tight. And there's not a lot of room for ductwork, electrical. Sometimes they'll make them a foot with these prefabricated joists. I think we saw that on our field trip where you can punch holes in that. But in the olden days, it was pretty tight. You know, there wasn't a lot of room. Of course, they didn't really have air conditioning, so they didn't care to run, you know, a 1-foot square duct through the ceiling. Here's a tightly attached ceiling for a library. Basically, you're seeing the structure of the building. There's no attic space in this situation. Suspended ceilings, which is what this is. It's hung on a grid. The roof deck is probably 3 or 4 feet above this ceiling, and these straight thing, those are the metal grid panels, and probably every couple of feet there's a wire going up to some structure holding it in place. And then you drop these panels. Someday I'm going to open one of those and let everybody see it. But you could just push that up and look in there. It's not attached. It's just laying there. This picture is of a 2x4 system. This is obviously a 2x2 system. But those are the most common types. You can also have, that's a picture. You can see the grid, and then you got the little hanger wire going up. There's a picture from above of what the light, you know, the lights well, in here we have suspended lights, but if you had a light in the ceiling, like this picture shows, that's, you know, on the other side, that's what it looks like. And you can see the wires going up. You can get different finishes for your tiles as well. You can get rough finishes. You can even get finishes that look like stamped metal, but they're really just acoustical tiles. So you can get quite fancy. Here's another example is showing the different elements that are in there. There's a fancy ceiling with lights in every diffused lighting in every panel. Here you can see these are acoustical ceilings, but it makes it the way the panels are made gives it a very linear look. Here you can see it's stamped. It gives it a very I don't know, tile look or something. There's a good look at what can be above these ceilings. You got your sprinkler head there. You got your tiles, and then you look up and you can see, you know, just the wires draped all around. There's a duct in the background right there. There's another duct. So you would put the ceiling in pretty close to last because you don't want things to mess it up. And they've got good luck. You better go. It's not a good idea to be late. So, anyway, you don't want to be messing up your finished product, so you wait at the last minute to put this stuff in. Here might be in a mechanical room, or you just need you want there to be something to hold your lights and, give a little bit of a boundary, but you also need a lot of circulation up there, so you might have something like that. Here's this is a suspended ceiling as well, but they're using like a mirror type panel. Gives it a very chic. And the grid there is concealed. Here's a wood one. It's suspended as well, but the grid is concealed. This is high dollar stuff right here. Sometimes you have to have, your ceilings have to be fire rated. You got to think about that when you're doing it, if it's a fire rated building or an enclosed room. And the stuff, any penetrations like the ductwork that goes from this room probably out to the hall, where that wall is right there, there has to be a damper in the ductwork that when the fire starts, the fire alarm system will automatically shut that damper and not allow any further air traffic through that wall. Here's an I can never say this, interstitial ceiling? I don't know. But it's basically a mid-ceiling, and you'll use it for mechanical stuff, and it's strong enough for people to walk on it, obviously, but it's not a full size, but you can go up there and work on your mechanical equipment and have a usable mechanical space. So then finished flooring is the very last thing. You put your ceiling in because you have ladders and stuff messing up your flooring. Then you come in and put your flooring in. So the function of a floor, just like a ceiling, can be a lot. It has a very big visual impression. You can make your space seem larger or smaller by the patterns on your floor. It has an impact on acoustics. This is a vinyl tile floor. It doesn't soak up much sound, but we have the walls and the ceiling that will do that. But perhaps it bounces the sound to the back where I'm heard easier in the back. It also can affect the light. If this was a black floor, it would seem a lot darker in here. But it's a lighter floor, so it helps reflect some of the light. Skid resistance is important. Wear and tear, they chose the vinyl tile in here because it's very durable. It's also easier to replace, in 5 to 10 years when it needs replacing. But you have to worry about, especially in wet areas, the skid resistance. You want some sort of texture on the floor so that people don't slip and fall. You also, in kitchens and bathrooms, need sanitation. A lot of times they'll just want to go in there and basically hose it down to get it sanitized. In airports and things like that, they do that a lot. I said it has an effect on noise. Sometimes there'll be conduits or electrical wires in the floor to have a floor plug in the middle of the room. You might do that in your living room if you had a big open, great room in your house, but your couch is in the middle of the room. How are you going to get the lamp over there? So you'll have a floor plug, and there'll be a conduit running to it. Again, it might have to be fire rated depending on the type of the building, and of course it will have to withstand some structural loads, the furniture, stuff like that. Here they're showing an underfloor service before they pour the floor. This is the waffle type slab. I don't know if y'all remember that. That was this class, right? Okay. Now they're putting in the conduits where they're going to run the phone lines and the electrical lines, and then they'll pour the concrete over all this, and it'll be a smooth surface. Here you can see the floor decking, the concrete, and then the carpet or whatever's going to go over top. Here's a good sectional view. Your floor decking right there. There's a conduit running through there with all your wires and blah, 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 and it comes up to the desk, and you can see the carpet on top of that. Sometimes you'll have poke-through fittings, which aren't that great, but it's a way to go sometimes. You can poke through in different areas of your replace depending on where you're going to need power at the moment. I don't really like the look of that. I like it to be more flush with the floor, but sometimes money's the issue. Here's a raised floor that we talk about. This is especially useful where a lot of computer stuff's going on, like where you can just run the wires, pick up the tiles and run the wires and rearrange things or replace things as needed. You can see there's duct work under there as well. So you got all your computer lines, your electrical, your duct work, everything's under the floor. And it's easy to maintain that way. Here's a flat wire system. This is used in offices quite a bit, where you use carpet tiles to finish off your space. Then when you remodel for the new tenant, you can just run these flat wires to where they want their floor outlets, and then the carpet tile will cover that up, and you won't even know it's there. Performance issues on a floor. Sometimes you want it to absorb the noise. If you need that, you probably want carpet. Skid resistance, fire resistance, we've already talked about that. Types of finished floor materials. There's hard, obviously, which can be stone, concrete, tile, I would consider hard. A lot of people like to do the stained concrete finish now. You'll see that in grocery stores or warehouse type places. You can even stamp the concrete to make it look like a pattern and then stain it. You think that's cheaper because you're not having to put stuff on the floor after it's done, but in reality it's not cheaper. It's durable and it'll last a long time, but you have to be so careful when you're pouring that concrete and you're making it look without blemish, and then you have to protect it all during construction when they're doing everything else. So it ends up being more expensive than if you just were to put down tile at the end or something else. So bricks and pavers can be a hard type flooring. Quarry tiles, you're showing different pictures of that. Ceramic tiles. You have lots of different patterns with that. Terrazzo. And here's some good details showing how you would install the hard floor materials. You could have a subfloor, or like a plywood or an oak subfloor, and you could have a mortar bed and then your tile on top of that. You could have a concrete slab with bricks. You could have stone on a concrete slab. There's the concrete slab, there's your mortar bed, and there's your stone. This is terrazzo, which is like a ground type of concrete. This is a divider strip. And if you've ever seen that, like in a terrazzo floor, they had like the gold lines or the silver lines. That's what that divider strip is. That's like an expansion or contraction joint, controls the cracking. So those are just different details. Here's a picture of ceramic tile flooring. There's one that you could do it on. I never would put that on a floor. That's pretty slippery looking to me. I would put that on a wall, maybe in a bathroom or something. Yeah. I don't think I'd put that on the floor though. But I guess if money's no object, you can do whatever you want. Wood flooring or bamboo flooring basically comes in, and you can install an entire wood floor without any nails by doing this by the tongue and groove method. You just come in and you pound it in there, and it's like it's floating above the subfloor. Which is a lot of people like the feeling of a warmth of a wood floor and the softness of it. There's a bamboo floor. It's a rapidly growing trend because of there's a lot of bamboo in the world. You can see the tongue and groove in this detail. You got your wood subfloor. They show nails here, but you don't have to have the nails if you don't want it. Not all of them are nailed in this one. But you can see how it goes together. And then you got a wood base covering up this little gap at the end. There's a wood floor blocking, so that they just sawed up a bunch of blocks and put it in there, giving a unique look. Resilient flooring, which is kind of like what this is, but you can have sheet vinyl or vinyl tiles. I think what they're showing here is sheet vinyl, which the problem with that is it's probably less expensive, but then if there's a flaw in it, you have to cut it out. Here, if somebody burned one of the tiles, we could just peel it up and put down a new one. It'd be a lot easier. Same with carpet tiles. That's why they use carpet tiles in offices, is because you can replace one or two without having to recarpet the whole place. And it's showing the detail there. It's usually glued down, and there's usually a vinyl cove base, which you can see. We have that in here, the brown rubber base against the wall. Fluid applied flooring is something they use, obviously, like in mechanics, car shops and stuff, because you spray it on, you even it out, and it's very easy to clean, wash down. It's very easy to maintain. Carpet, you can either glue it down or you can have a pad for a softer feel. Here's some carpet tile, and you can see you have a pattern to that. Or you can pretty much make it without, noticing the seams, depending on the pattern. So floor thickness. One thing you have to remember is if you have different materials throughout your structure, you'll have to, but you want your finished floor all to be the same. Like if you have tile one place and thin carpet tile another, you'll have to have a drop in the slab where that tile is to make the level even with the carpet. So you have to think about those things when you're detailing your building. Or if you have a brick floor, you have to have a really thick drop in the slab because you want your finish to be all the same. So you'd have, I don't know if there's a picture of that. No. You'd have, you got some bricks over here on the floor, and then you got a place where you just want tile. So your slab basically has to drop down 3 inches so that the brick tops will be at the same level as your carpet. So flooring and ceilings is all in section 9. That's the finished materials section. And that's the end of the show. So just a recap. We got a test or exam on Monday, which you need to be here for or you're counted absent, even though it's online. And then we have our final projects a week from today, presented in class. So if you have any questions on those, let me know. And then your final exam will be taken online and must be completed no later than Wednesday, May 7th at 10:30 a.m. It'll be 50 questions, 2 points each, and you study the review from all the other tests and your old test, because it'll be questions from the same banks. So any questions on the questions? And you can still hand me details up until the last day of class. Okay, that's all I got then.